Alright, so for this next video, I want to talk a little bit about the similarities between the ListView class and arrays in the ArrayList class. So looking at this setup that I've got right here, I've listed off 6 similarities between ListView and ArrayList. The first one right here is that we can actually use the advanced for loop to iterate over an observable list. So the enhanced for loop is a sort of unique syntactical restructuring of a for loop that makes it a bit more concise, specifically for things like arrays, ArrayList, the observable list, and a couple of other types of lists that we can use in Java. So this is just a convenient way to be able to step through the items of it in a more concise way. Once I get more in depth into ArrayLists a little bit later on, then we can actually see a little bit more about this enhanced for loop as part of a sort of review. Some of the other things we have here, we have got the get method to be able to get a specific element. So we saw that previously when I showed the get method to be able to check the indices within that observable list for the index that I created in the previous video. We have the size method to be able to check for the number of elements. Again, we saw that in the previous video. We have the add method to be able to add an element. So I've seen this a little bit before when I did it for either the add or the add all method with the controls, as well as with setting up the list view when I wanted to use the get items method and then add a set of items to it. We have the remove method. We've seen that in a previous video as well to be able to remove one of the elements from it. And we also have the set method that allows us to both remove and then add something, so kind of replace an element inside of an observable list. Okay, so these are a lot of the things that they have in common with one another. The other thing I want to talk a little bit about is being able to kind of transition from, say, an array to a list view, or from an observable list to an array, things like this. And the way that I want to approach this is with this program that I have created already, which just briefly kind of goes through the steps of getting this set up. So going through this from top to bottom, so we've got our usual imports for our application, stage, and scene. The next 2 imports that I've got are related to that collections package that I mentioned. This first one is going to be for what is known as FX collections. This is a more, I would say, kind of general or more generic setup to the collections classes. We'll see in a moment the relationship that has with everything. We also got the observable list again, which came from that collections package. I've got a list view that I've created for this, and I also have an array list. So we've got that right there. So I need to use the import from the util package to get the array list class, so that I can kind of use that in place of an array if I choose to. So then we've got the usual boilerplate. We've got our header, extends application. We've got our main method with launch. We have our start method. And then coming into the start method, the first thing that I've got right here is this string array. So you can see right here, we made a string array indicated by those brackets. I then initialize this so that we have this array with 3 items in it, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. I then, on line 22, make an observable list with a set of string items. I call it string list, and then I need to use that FX collections class. There's a particular method on it known as observable array list that allows me to convert this array into an observable list. So I'm going to pass in the array right here, and this will allow for that conversion to take place. And then the last thing I want to do, I can then take that observable list that I've created and then turn that into a list view by making a list view, again making sure that the data type matches up. So it's going to be of strings. Call it something like list view. This is equal to a new list view. Right here, rather than specifying that this is a string for the object, I'm only using those 2 angular brackets. This is essentially what's known as the diamond operator when I do it like this. And basically, because I've specified that the variable is a string, or is of its items will be of type string, then it must be the case that the object I'm creating will have that same type. So it's kind of just inferring what the type is supposed to be based on that. All right. And then I pass in the string list right here for my list view, and that will actually take this observable list that I created, which consists of Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and it'll actually assign that to the list view. That'll be the set of items for it. Alternatively, if I wanted to, I could remove this right here, instead rely on this line that I've included here, which will just take the items, so essentially grab the observable list related to this list view, and then it will just add all of the items from that list to it. So I've kind of seen this in the previous setup for the Pizza Maker 2. I did something kind of similar to add the individual string items to it, to each of those two observable lists that those two list views that we made. In this case now I can actually use a single string array, convert it to an observable list, and then add all of the items at once like this. Okay. The other thing I've included here is for being able to take an observable list and then convert that to an array. So I've got this observable list where I can grab the set of selections, so anything that I've selected in my list view. I'm using the list view that I created right here. We have getSelectionModel, so we still have to call that method. And then rather than focusing on the index or indices of this list view, if I want to get the things that I've selected, not necessarily just their position or their index, I can use the getSelectedItem or getSelectedItems, either one of those two methods, to be able to get the set of selections from that particular list view. In this particular case, this is a bit abstract. I'm mostly just using this as a demonstration. I'm not actually doing anything with this the set of selections. This is primarily just here to be able to demonstrate this conversion from an observable list to a string array. So in line 27, we can actually see that occurring. So then I'm going to take this observable list, selections, I'm going to call a method called toArray on that observable list, and then I'm going to use that to convert this to the string array that I call item array. And the thing that I have to pass into this toArray method is actually just a new string object. In this case, it's just an empty string. It's got a size of 0, so it can't actually take anything. This is only here to be able to specify what type of array I need to convert this into, whether that's a string array, maybe an int array, maybe if it was a control, say like a label array. This is just here to be able to specify the type of the array so that it understands precisely how it needs to perform this conversion. All right. The last thing I've gone ahead and set up here, I went ahead and just made the list view so we can at least see it, the list view that I'm creating from an array right here. And then I go ahead and set up the stage with the scene, a title, using arrays with list views, and then displaying it. So I'll go ahead and save it like this, and we'll run it real quick. And then I'll make one last little change to this to demonstrate a slightly different way that we could approach converting an array to a list view. So I'll go ahead and compile that. Make sure that this is capitalized. Run that. And then we can see the 3 items right here. So we've got our Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Those 3 strings from that string array that we had created initially. All right, so I'm going to close that. And then coming over here, since I went ahead and did an import to bring in the ArrayList class, I want to go ahead and demonstrate using that in place of this string array right here. So I'm just going to go ahead and comment out this line and this line, and replace this with some code related to a ArrayList instead. So first I need to go ahead and make sure that we get the ArrayList class. Just like with my list view and observable list, I need to specify that this will be a set of strings. So this is going to be a string ArrayList. This is going to be equal to a new ArrayList. We use that diamond operator to just infer the type of it. Use our constructor. And then I need to go ahead and start adding the individual items to this. So just like with the list view where we could add different items to it, I'll do something kind of similar for my ArrayList. So we're going to do add, and then I'll add each of these individual items to it. So I'll have Monday, add Tuesday, and we will add Wednesday. Okay. The next thing I'll go ahead and do after getting the array list set up is then go ahead and make my observable list. So this is going to look very similar to what I had previously. We'll get our observable list. This will be of type string. This will again still just be a string list. This is equal to using that fx collections class. And then we'll have our observable array list. And then instead of passing in an array, now I'm going to pass in this array list that I had. So we'll have our string array list. And then everything else will still follow in the same way that we had before. Okay. So we'll go ahead and compile that and run it and see that it will still look exactly the same as it did before. Compile it, run it, and there we go. So we still see our 3 items, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, for this list view that we have here. All right, go ahead and close that. And that will wrap up everything that I wanted to say about this relationship between our arrays, array lists, observable lists, and list views. So we can kind of see how to convert or transition from one of these to another with a couple of these different methods that are available to us. In the next video, we're going to wrap up everything about the list view class by taking a look at creating list views of one of the controls, or at least being able to demonstrate how to create a list view of something a bit more complex than just strings in relation to that pizza maker application that we've been working on.